In this lesson, we're going to talk about some common chords that you'll need in country blues. And of course, you're going to use a lot of your very familiar major chord shapes. But beyond that, the blues is full of the dominant seventh sound. So what we're going to do is take our familiar chord shapes and convert them into dominant seventh chord versions of those, because you're going to be using those quite a lot in country blues. We'll start out with a basic C major chord shape, and you can convert that to a dominant 7 or C7 chord just by putting your little finger down on the third string, third fret here. And it's important to know that this is now a very movable chord shape. And you can play this, of course, we're rooted here on C, but if we move it up, we've got a D7, E7, F7, and so on. So it's a very usable chord shape. And beyond that, we can move on to an A chord, convert that to an A7, just by letting this third string ring out. And then this is really a movable shape as well. We can move this up the fretboard. So moving from A, B7, C7, and so on. Again, another very common chord shape that you're going to encounter a lot in acoustic blues. Then we're going to move on to our G shape here. And it pays to really finger your G chord like this as a finger picker, because it'll give you a lot more options to do things with your index finger here. So versus playing your G chord like this, I would really suggest getting into the habit of playing your G chord in this way. But now converting this to a G7, you can actually make use of that very thing by moving down from the G note on the first string to the F note on the first string. And this is a difficult one to make into a movable shape, but what you find in country blues is that the shape really looks a lot more like an A chord. And it's kind of coming out of that chord shape, right? If you view your finger here instead of the nut, this becomes a very movable and very useful chord. And we can move on to another common chord form, and that's going to come out of an E shape. And I'll show you another little trick for acoustic pickers as well. So we've got our E shape, and if you simply pick up your ring finger and let that fourth string ring out, you've got a nice dominant 7. You can also put down the D note on the second string, and you've got a good dominant 7 chord there. You can move that into a movable shape in the bar chord format and extend up here as well. But what I'll show you is a cool, compact little chord shape that I use a lot in acoustic blues. And it's really just taking the heart out of the big bar chord, which can be a little bit cumbersome sometimes to move around the neck, and playing it right here on these 3 strings. This little 3-note chord gets at the essence of the dominant 7th sound, and it's very movable. Works great over an A because you've got that nice A bass that you can put to use as well. And the final very common chord shape is coming from a D chord. Convert that to a D7 by dropping down to the C note on the second string. If you refinger this, this becomes a very common chord shape in acoustic blues that you can move up and down the neck. One popular spot is here for a nice A chord. Cool sounds happening there. So a quick review: we've got our C shape that we can move around. We've got our A shape. We've got the G, which we'll just play here in this A spot. Then we've got our E shape with this little bonus shape here. And then finally D. So So those are some very common chord shapes, and they're really just coming from alterations of chords that you probably already know, just the major chords, the cowboy chords in this first position here. So get used to moving around the neck with these chord shapes in their dominant seventh version. You're going to use them a lot in country blues.